I did want to ask you about an incident that we had in qualifying, which was we had a bit of a disaster for Vettel before he may have contributed to him going out in Q1 as well. Should Mazepin have got a penalty for impeding Vettel? Because in the notes, the stewards took into account Vettel's comments that there were too many cars in one place. Although Mazepin himself felt that his teammate Schumacher deliberately blocked him, despite an understanding that it was Nikita's turn to be the first car in qualifying. So Vettel actually seemed to sway that. What did you make of that incident?
I think, it's a very interesting one. And I'm glad you mentioned about how the two Haas drivers, they've given their own individual thoughts and opinions on it, who should have gone first and whose turn was it to go. It's not the first time we've seen cars this year trip over each other towards the end of a qualifying session. The nature of the track, it's very narrow, it's very fast. Single file comes to mind in Sector 3. It was always going to happen. My thoughts go back to Austria and to Spain as well, where Nikita got caught out again. Do I think it should have been a penalty? I don't know. Maybe his engineer should have been on the radio. Obviously, I don't know if his engineer was on the radio. I should imagine he was, but maybe there should be more of an emphasis saying there is a fast car approaching. You need to be single file or off the racing line, whatever is the racing line nowadays, because that's what I love about Zandvoort. There's so many different interpretations of the line, but we'll talk about that later on. It's a real hard one to call. I guess, it's the last corner. Well, technically, it's the penultimate corner. 13 and 14 are two different corners on this track, but yeah, I don't know. Is it penalty worthy? I think it's an honest mistake. But it has impacted Sebastian Vettel's qualifying session, so punishment should be given out. I don't really know, Alex. I'm a bit lost on this one. Do you have any? What's your direction? What do you think?
Certainly, Vettel, despite it hurting him, he seemed quite happy for it not to be a penalty, seeing as he swayed them the other way. I think the story seems to be that it was supposed to be Nikita's turn in front because they were taking it in turns to go first in the qualifying session, and Schumacher thought Mazepin was going too slowly, and over the radio he asked his engineer if he could overtake him, and his engineer said yes. So obviously some kind of miscommunication going on there. But yeah, I don't really think it's a penalty, to be honest, because like you said, it's just one of those miscommunications, and it wouldn't have helped Vettel to penalise Haas. Like, what difference would have that made, really? And also, it's hard to say exactly what is being penalised, really. I mean, impeding a lap, I suppose, but like you said, the nature of the track means people tend to line up there as they go out. Yeah. You just end up with these rather grey situations where it's hard to say. So I think the stewards probably called this one about right.
It's interesting, though, the decision they made, because if you look at the Spanish Grand Prix this year, Nikita almost did the exact same move. He was behind 3 or 4 cars on the last lap of the session. The clock was ticking down, and he wanted to go because he didn't feel like he was going to make it. And he pulled out and got in the way of Lando Norris, I think it was, or some other driver, and got a penalty for it. So a very similar incident happened today, and no penalty was given. Now, I remember thinking back to the Spanish Grand Prix, or when we recorded it, I thought it was quite harsh. So I'm glad no penalty was given today, because on reflection and listening to your comments, I do believe it was just an accident. It's just racing, or should I say it's just qualifying. It's just one of those things. But a little bit of inconsistency with the FIA throughout the same season with regards to like penalties and, during qualifying. So that just needs to be ironed out, especially going forward into next year.
Was the Spain one, was he entirely on was it just of his own volition? Like were there no other cars involved?
There were 3 cars in front of him, all queuing, going really slow in the chicane, chicane.
I remember now.
And he pulled out. And I remember thinking, he's well within his right to try. I know there's a gentleman's agreement not to overtake cars, but if the time's running out and you need to put a lap in, then
he has a right to put a lap in too.
Yeah, exactly. It's not within the rules that you can't overtake a car in front of you because you're trying to stay pally with them. They have a right to put a lap in, like you said. So very similar incidents, 2 completely different outcomes, both of them polar opposite ends of the spectrum. So that's just the FIA.
Yeah, of course, the stewards, there's slightly different stewards between each race, aren't there? So there's also some literal inconsistency in the stewards. So it's a hard one to call. Maybe they have specific guidelines that we don't get to see. I hope not. I hope that they're just following exactly what it is and it's just down to interpretation. But yeah, tough one to call. I think in those situations, unless somebody has deliberately done something quite dangerous, I think generally speaking, it doesn't seem to really help anyone to go around penalising people for it. It's not like you can, especially if someone's missed a lap, you can't give them the lap back, can you? So,
no, I completely agree.